someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But Jesus said to him, "Friend, who sent me to be a judge or arbiter over you?" And he said to them, "Take care, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." Then he told them a parable. The land of a rich man produced abundantly, and he thought to himself, "What should I do? For I have no place to store up my crops." Then he said, "I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich toward God." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Grace to you and peace from God the Father, from Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. You may be seated. I think most of us in this room would probably agree that chocolate in and of itself is not evil. I think that most of us understand that we call it similar articles, that in fact chocolate can be good in that it releases endorphins, which is to say that it can relieve stress. To a certain degree, it can lessen some pains, aches and pains. And there's even some studies that argue that chocolate is so good for us that sometimes it can relieve a certain amount of our depression. So in all, you know, in proper quantities, chocolate is really good for us. However, I think we will also agree that too much chocolate or too much of a good thing is really damaging and bad for us, most especially if you're diabetic. I mean, you could say, you know, if you're in a diabetic coma, you're not hurting, you're not depressed, and there's no stress. But on the other hand, there's no fun in that either. If you're just laid up in a bed somewhere, passed out, well, anyway, nevertheless, you get the point. So it seems to me that too much of any of a good thing, it depends on what we do with it. You know, there's an old book from antiquity, way back in the 60s. And it tells a story of these young kids. They get these tickets and they get to go into this chocolate factory, Willy Wonka chocolate factory. And one of the kids, Augustus Gloop, he's just a little glutton, bless his little heart. He's just greedy and he wants it all for himself. Well, inside the chocolate factory, when they first get their first glimpse, these kids, well, Augustus sees this river of chocolate with a chocolate waterfall, and it's just mesmerizing, as you might imagine. Well, he thinks this whole chocolate river, and he's cautioned not to touch it because everything is sanitized. This is, in essence, a giant mixing bowl for the chocolate, for all the chocolate bars. Well, nevertheless, he runs to the river and he starts slurping it up and getting it all over everything, gets his hands in it, it's just a big mess. Well, then he falls into the chocolate river and he gets sucked up into the mixing pipes, and there's these clear pipes. It's really, really funny. He's kicking his little legs, and, you know, it shouldn't be funny, but it is. Of course, and he's screaming, and then he gets sucked off, and there's several different places. He gets extracted from the factory, in other words. So that's not good, but it's all a result of his gluttony and his greed, because it was all about him, it's all about me, nobody else matters. It doesn't matter that this chocolate was intended for thousands of chocolate bars, that this chocolate was intended to be dispersed all across the globe even, to all millions of different people. That didn't matter. So Augustus Gloop, the only thing that mattered was there was a river of chocolate, and it was all about him in that moment and in that time. And so it didn't make any difference, the repercussions, because no one else mattered. That sounds really familiar to me, it seems, especially in the late news that we've been reading. Well, in our gospel lesson, it's all about that. It seems to me that really sums it up. It's really interesting to me that we have this fellow. And one of my favorite scholars this week, Matt Skinner, he talked about a painting, and I didn't bring it up because it was too small, but nevertheless, in this painting, there's these two houses, if you can just picture for just a moment. One house is a little larger than the other. There's lots and lots of rooms in the house. You know, it's kind of open so you can see in with all the lights on. And there's a lone figure sitting at the kitchen table, just all by himself. And he's just sitting with his hands folded on the table. And at the other end of the table, there's a figure, kind of pointing like this at him, and that's it. that is the whole home on this one side. On the other side of the picture, there's another, it's a little more modest-sized home, a lot of room still, and the lights are on, and there's another fellow sitting at the table. He's sitting like this, but he's surrounded by bukus of people. There's men, women, children, all sorts of people all around him. And the title of the painting is Rich Fool, You Rich Fool. And so the implication is that on the one hand, we have this one fellow who has, and let's just be clear, the gospel never, ever, ever says that wealth is in itself evil, just like chocolate isn't. It never says that what the caution is, and especially in Luke's gospel, is that it can warp our values, it can twist our frame of mind, but it doesn't have to. But there's always that caution, that word of, be careful. Because what could have happened with this rich farmer, obviously he knew what he was doing. He had bumper crops. I mean, he was clearly good at farming. And clearly he had an understanding that we need savings, for future reference. I mean, he had some basic principles down, and none of that is criticized. However, I mean, he was so good at it that you can imagine if he'd been a balanced individual, that a third component would have been the community. That he not only was he a good farmer, but he was also a good saver, and he was also good and faithful with the community. He kind of spread it around a little bit. Well, if he had been those things, you can imagine he could have been invited to a synagogue or maybe a community center where he could have lectured about farming and how so everyone could have bumper crops. I mean, that's another way he could have given of himself. He could have explained to people the importance of saving and how to do it, and kind of a proper, a balanced amount. And then he could have also spoken about all the good he could have done with some of his bumper crop for the community. Not just the synagogue, but also just the larger community. He could have lectured about all those things. But that's not how the gospel played out. The parable, I didn't count how many times he said I, but did you notice it was all about I. It was all about him. And then when he got bored with that, he started speaking to his soul. And then he said, and soul? I mean, what a weird, just to change it up a little bit. And it's the whole thing sounded like that whole original sin concept where the arrow is pointed, it goes out from us and directly, it's like a U-turn right back in on us. The whole story is I. And to the point that none of it mattered. Whereas the guy in the opposite house, you can imagine, all right, suppose he had an equally bumper crop. He could have been the guy that, that taught people how to be a good farmer. He could have been everything that this fellow wasn't. Because he was surrounded by community. He had people around him, people that cared. And in light of news, past couple of days, it seems to me that this speaks volumes to what's happening in our culture. And I'm not the end of all, I'm not saying I have all the answers, but I am saying this, that if your life matters than a whole lot of other people's lives, there's something seriously wrong. And it's a cultural issue, it seems to me. And it seems to me that it starts with, this notion that we need to collectively, I think as a nation, as a people, begin to think more outside of ourselves. I think that if you read certain amount of articles, that there's so many times it's this turned in on self stuff. It's people are so self-absorbed, and part of that is fear generated, I think, for different reasons. And it really doesn't matter what the motive is. The point is, if we're concerned more with what's going on with our neighbors and with people outside of ourselves, and we genuinely care what's happening to other people, that will eventually be reflected, I think, in the whole culture. But that's not the big picture that we're seeing overall. And it's tragic and it's sad. I think it's sad for this farmer and our story. It's sad that there he is with all this wonderful stuff, but no one to enjoy it with. There's no family, there's no friends, there's no community. It's like, I guess it's Luke. There he was there with a bunch of other people and his mom, different family, and there's this river of chocolate that so many wonderful things could have happened with it. But he made different choices where all that was cut off. It's like it was just cut off. And it's the same thing happening in our culture. There's some wonderful things that we can share individually and collectively, but we've become so self-absorbed, it seems, that we're not able to think past that as a group. And I think that part of the church's responsibility is to reflect that, I think, in community. And partly how we do that, I think, is to take better notice of, well, partly even in-house, each other, when stuff's going on, to be more acutely aware when people have needs and let them know that they're not going through it alone. Because I know we all get busy. I know we all, we all have lives and things happen. But it doesn't hurt just to take a few minutes to let someone know you're thinking about them. And not just in-house, but even outside and beyond. We all know people outside of community, either places we work, extended family and friends, people we bump into. There's a fellow at the cleaners I go to that it's kind of a long story. Short story is that his mom has been going through an awful lot of stuff. And so every time I see him, and all you have to do is just ask. So, how's it going with mom? And I never know if I'm going to walk in there and she's going to be gone. I mean, she's in critical condition. She could die in a minute. And one day he will say that, well, I lost her over the weekend. And it's going to be sad. But at least you'll know somebody cared enough to ask. That's the point. And to not be afraid to ask people, well, how is it going with Betty? How is it going these days? I mean, is it better after all, or are you still in a rut? I mean, what's happening? Not just the cleaners guy and not just the people we know, but, you can generally tell with people, and most of us have a pretty good intuition, it's okay to be a little bit nosy. It really is. If they don't want you to know, I promise you, they'll say, it is none of your business, Sparky. And you need to come to a place in your life where that's okay. Let that be okay. But at least you cared enough to ask. Hey, it seems like something's going on. Is there anything you want to talk about? Well, not with you. Okay, then. I've been told that a number of times. And I walk in and well, I guess that's oh man. And so, but you have to get to a point where that's going to be okay. But at least you care enough to ask someone, how are things really? It kind of get beyond that surface stuff. Everybody says, oh, I'm fine. You're a liar. You are not. Tell me how you really are now. And you may be surprised. Sometimes you better have a few minutes because they'll tell you. If people believe that you really do care, and I hope that this would start coming out of the heart and you really do care, people sense that and they'll start to share some stuff. And that's how our culture, I think, will shift back to a culture that is living outside of itself. I think that's a starting point. I think the churches, all the collective church, and not just the Christian church, but all the different spiritual disciplines, we all teach, to reach out beyond ourselves one way or another. And I think that needs to be reflected better in our culture. Maybe, and not just with young people, it's all ages, as we've seen. And so just to reach out and but we have to do it on purpose. I think we have to practice it. I think it is important that we pray for people who are hurting and we come together and mourn collectively as a church and as a group of people. I think it's important that we come together and we celebrate together collectively as a group of people, like the Johnson's wedding. And it's okay to send a card, by the way. It's not just when things are horrible and sad and falling apart. It's okay also to send, hey, congratulations on the wedding. Congratulations on the good news. They make cards that are actually happy, not just when things are really bad. You don't have to send, well, you could send a sympathy card and rock out there, say, sorry you got married. No, wait, scratch that out. And happy that you got married, But it's the same thing. People, it's the very same notion. You're reaching out beyond ourselves. And I think people will notice. I think it'll catch on, and I think that's part of our hope. I mean, we have someone who showed us ultimately what it's like to give all for the sake of someone else. We do also see, and it's important we acknowledge what happened to him. Certainly he was rejected somewhere along the way, right? But we also see God's response to that kind of rejection, where he was raised back up. It was like an affirming him. All right, you may have rejected him, but he's my yes. That's what I really meant. That's how I meant for you to live in the world. And it's not just a model, but it is, do we really answer to him as Lord after all? Or not? And to me, that's a tough question that each of us has to answer. But until we start following that model, giving of ourselves, I don't think anything's going to change ever. But I think we can. Jesus started with 12 people. There's a few more than 12 in this room. We could start just with ourselves, intentionally asking people, hey, what is going on in your life? And then listen. Amen?
Amen.
May the peace which passes all human understanding, we follow our hearts and follow our minds in Christ Jesus our Lord. Amen.